Hey guys, what's going on? It's P. Gamboa here, and in today's episode we're going to be installing a dash cam for my 2016 Chevy Silverado. I've been looking around the market for a dash cam and I finally settled on this one by Street Guardian. This is model number SG9665GC. This is version 3 of the dash cam. I've been doing a lot of research over the last 6 months and I finally went ahead and made the purchase of this dash cam, and today we're going to be going over how to hardwire install this into my truck. And so before we get started with the installation, I wanted to go over kind of what comes in the box here. And here is your dash cam. This is a fairly compact dash cam here. So I did a lot of research. I joined the Dashcam Talk website specifically for this model. Street Guardian has phenomenal support. You have a question, you post it in their forum and on their thread, and they respond within minutes. So very excited about the response and the support from this company and the reviews on this particular dash cam. So let's go over what comes in this box. You obviously have your dash cam. Now I went ahead and installed the CPL lens here that's clipped on the front, and that's supposed to help with the glare. So that comes in the box. I did install that prior to recording this video here. You do get a nice mesh bag, I guess, when you remove the dash cam from your windshield to take it inside for whatever reason. You get a quick start guide. You get a business card here for North America support. And over here you've got the GPS module, and this is the one that mounts to the window. Looks like you have an extension cable for one of your inputs here. So you've got an input for your GPS, an AV out, and then your USB connection. And then here up top you've got your power menu, record microphone options here. So you do get the GPS module, you get an extension cable. This is the cigarette lighter 12-volt adapter that plugs into the camera. This guy is an adapter, so it drops the voltage down to, I believe, 5 volts here. Yep, 5 volts, 1 amp. You've got a cable organizer tray. So essentially what this does is when you have your camera mounted, this guy mounts underneath like so that you can hide your cables going into the headliner. You got a pry tool so you can remove your trim, I guess your pillar trim. You've got a couple of wedge bases. These are the bases that the camera actually attaches to. So on the camera itself, it'll be notched out there. So when you stick this onto the windshield, the camera will mount on to this guy here. And you've got a different angled wedge, this guy here and this one here. Now I did ask a question to Street Guardian on the differences between the two, and because we're using the CPL lens on the camera, they recommended to use the thicker wedge to provide better angling of that camera. This model came with a 32 gigabyte Samsung card. I did pick up a 128 gig micro SD card. Some extra 3M adhesive. These guys are the replacement adhesives for these guys. Some cleaning strips, some more adhesives. You have a strip adhesive for your cable tray. Comes with a memory card reader, and then some other 3M stuff here. And we're going to be installing this into my truck. Again, my truck's a 2016 Chevy Silverado. The most common probably method of installation is either using the 12-volt cigarette lighter adapter, or the other common method is to use one of these add-a-fuse taps here. And essentially what this is you pick this guy up, and this plugs into an existing fuse in your fuse block, and then you add an additional fuse, and that's where this wire you'll tap in for the power. So what is recommended is the cigarette lighter adapter end gets cut off, and then you can either hardwire that power line to a spot in your fuse block, or simply tap that power line into here, and then the other black wire will be your ground. So we're going to get this installed, and again, I am really excited about this camera, and let's get started. One thing I forgot to mention, guys, is that when tapping power for this camera, Street Guardian recommends tapping into an accessory voltage circuit. And what that means is your vehicle will have 3 different types of power voltages. You've got a constant battery voltage, and Street Guardian does not recommend you do that because that means your camera will be recording 24/7. When your truck is turned off, your camera will continue recording and you have the possibility of draining your battery. There have been some people that have mentioned a dead battery the next morning, so do not tap into a constant battery positive voltage circuit. An accessory voltage circuit is similar to like your center console power. It's power that remains on for about 5 or 10 minutes when your truck is turned off or until you open the door, which is a recommended method. And the third method would be a run crank voltage circuit, which means anytime the key is turned and the engine is running, the power is on. When you turn that key off or turn the truck off, the power is turned off. So I'm going with the accessory voltage, which will allow this to continue running once the truck is turned off for about 5 or 10 minutes, similar to your retained accessory power voltage. So we're going to locate a spot in the truck, and that's where we're going to make the tap. Alright guys, so I've decided for mounting purposes I'm going to be putting the camera on the left side behind the rear view mirror, and then I'll be putting the GPS module on the upper right corner of the windshield there. I did use the wet and dry cleaning wipes to clean the areas off. I did some test fit, and what I'll be doing is I'll be using the camera or the cable tray cover to do this install. So essentially what this is going to be is this cable tray will sit right up here alongside the rear view mirror channel, and then the camera will sit underneath like so. So it'll be right around here. I will be moving my toll tag over to probably the top center here because the toll tag does get into view. So that's where I'm going to be placing it. I did clean the area off, so I'm going to go ahead and get that mounted now. Alright guys, so I've got my dash cam mounted. I did remove the rearview mirror for clarity purposes. You don't have to do that for this step, but I went ahead and did it so you can kind of take a look and see how I aligned the camera against the black rectangular space where the rearview mirror sits. I will be removing my toll tag. That does get in the view of the camera, so I will be removing that and relocating my toll tag up here to the top area. So my plan next is to get the power cable ran up the channel, up into the headliner to the left, and then the GPS will go up and to the right. The GPS module will be mounted on the top right corner up here. That area has been cleaned off already. And for the power, it's going to go run up to the left. It's going to come down the pillar into the fuse block, and we'll get that wired up into the fuse block accordingly. So just wanted to show you what this looks like mounted from the side. You can see with the wedge, I did use the thicker wedge that gives that angle, the camera a better angle there for that CPL lens. So let's get this wired up. As you can see, the cable tray has these clips that you can actually clip your wires into, so it keeps it nice and sturdy. So I've got those 2 wires in there. We'll put the cover on, and again we'll run the power to the left and the GPS module to the right. Now that we have the cover on, we can run our cables to the left and to the right. Since the GPS module is almost an exact cable length, and the fact that I mounted my camera onto the left side of the rearview mirror, I'm going to end up having to use the extension cable for that GPS module. So the GPS module cable extension will plug in, and then that'll just give us an extra, 6 inches or so of lead to get that module in the corner exactly where I want it placed. Thing to note, when you're ready to either plug or unplug, the manual does recommend to remove the camera off from the base first, then you can plug and unplug. Otherwise, the angle of the cable is actually hitting the cover. So remove the camera first and then plug or unplug your cables as needed. And there I've got the GPS module installed. That extra pigtail lead was just enough to get that positioned exactly where I wanted. Using a small flat blade screwdriver, carefully take the covers off your driver's assist handle, pry those off with the flat blade, and then you've got two 10mm bolts on the inside. If you don't have a driver's assist handle and you've got the plain molding or plain pillar molding, there'll be 2 tabs, one at the top and one down here at the bottom. Just gently pry this off. There'll be a tether here in the center that you want to watch out for. Disconnect the tether, and that should allow you to remove the pillar. One thing to note when you are removing these bolts, be very careful with your socket. If you slip, you're going to hit your windshield. So just protect the handle of the ratchet as you're taking it off by putting your hand over the handle there in case you do slip. So we'll get that cover off, and then we'll get that wire harness ran down the pillar here. Alright guys, so since I've retrofitted my rearview mirror with an auto dimming rearview mirror, I had a harness that I had to run for that retrofit, and this was already in the headliner. So all I've done here is simply zip tied the dash cam power supply to that harness. We'll get that tucked into the headliner, and we'll just follow this all the way down the pillar into this wire channel down here to the side, and ultimately we will end up in the X51L fuse panel. When we get to about this area here in this wire loom, I'm going to strip that wire back, and we're going to be tapping into, there's a violet wire with a yellow stripe here, and that is the same circuit for the accessory power voltage. So we'll get that ran, and then we'll go through that tap here shortly. So I've got my wire fastened and zip tied to the wire channel. That's ran down the pillar and then behind the dash down the side. Now in order for you to run that through, you do have to cut the cigarette lighter adapter off, so I went ahead and did that. So what I did here is I cut that off. I left a little bit of a lead in case I wanted to use this for something else. I did that. And so you do want to make sure that you cut that off where you're ahead of the inverter here, this inverter or adapter. This is the guy that converts it from your 12 volts down to 5 volts. So you want to cut it, you know, as close as you can to the adapter, but that left me some extra lead there in case I want to use that for something else. Now this guy here, I found a spot where I think I'm going to mount it. I'm going to mount it right in this little space right here, so it sits perfectly right in there. And what we're going to do for the power is on this connector. This is the X3 connector of the X51L fuse panel. And what we're going to want here is pin number 11, which is our accessory ignition voltage. It's a violet with a yellow wire. And if we look at this connector, it's going to be this wire right here. So number 11, it goes 1 through 10 on this first column, and then 11 through 20 on the left column. Now this circuit is the same as tapping into this, let's see here if I can focus, this first 10 amp fuse right here. So if you don't have the terminal or want to do it this way, you can do an add a fuse and hit that 10 amp fuse right there. So we'll get that wired up, and we'll get it tested out. For ground, you can probably tap right here into this ground bolt, so you can tap ground essentially anywhere. So I'm going to take a look at where I want to tap the ground, but for the power, we're going to be taking this terminal out. We're going to cut that end off and then recrimp a new terminal with our power lead from our end here. Alright guys, so for this part here, I went ahead and took my door sill off, and the reason for that is because I've got some excess wire before I hit the inverter here. So I wanted to hide that excess wire down here in the kick panel, and then whatever's left over will be and will end up here in the fuse panel. So I've got about an 18-inch lead off the inverter, so we're going to get him routed and we're going to land that appropriately. And then again, for the ground, I'll probably just hit this bolt right here. So that's what the excess loop looks like. I got it looped up cleanly, zip tied here to the kick panel. We'll get this covered up with the kick panel, and now what we're left with is the inverter along with our lead, and then we'll get that wrapped up into this loom and landed accordingly. So I'm getting ready to strip the outer insulation jacket back so I can expose the black and the red wires here for our wire tap. And I am using a pair of strippers using the 12 gauge option there that cuts the outer jacket perfectly. I tried using the smaller gauge and I nicked the wire, so using a 12 gauge on this works perfectly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to probably leave this insulation up to this point of this loom, and this is where the loom transitions from the factory harness to my harness. So I'm going to leave about that much of the insulation on, and then from this point forward we'll get that outer insulation jacket off. And what I'll do is the black wire will come up and probably tap here, and then the red wire will continue on and then splice in with my violet with the yellow stripe wire there. So in the process of stripping the outer insulation jacket back, I found myself nicking the wire. The wire that comes with this power supply is a fairly thin wire, so what I'm going to do here to make it easier for me is I've shortened this down to where it's going to give me just enough to get past this loom, and then I will be soldering some 22 gauge wire onto this guy and using some heat shrink tubing so I can extend that and get those landed accordingly. So I think the wire used here is like a 26 gauge maybe, so I will be soldering some 22 gauge stranded wire to that. So that's the extension soldered. We'll get some heat shrink tubing and then we'll get that all wired up. Here we have the two individual strands with some heat shrink tubing applied. I'll get another heat shrink over the entire thing and then we'll get these wires landed. So here's what I've got so far. I've got that power supply coming wrapped with the main loom, and I separated the black wire here and the red wire continues down this loom. And what we'll do now is we're going to land this red wire into this connector, and we'll be removing this violet with the yellow stripe. And to do that, you need to take this brown faceplate cover off. This is what holds the pins in. So you want to carefully lift this up and out on both sides, take this brown faceplate off, and then using a pick tool, we're going to get in there and remove or lift the tab on the inside to get that terminal out. Plate cover off. You can look down in that groove and there's a small little plastic retainer clip on the inside of that terminal. Get a pick tool or a flat blade screwdriver, get it down in there and move that connector to the left, and then while doing that, pull the terminal out. So now that I have that wire terminal removed, what we're going to do is we're going to cut that end off, we're going to strip some wire back, and we're going to get the red wire spliced with this guy, and we're going to recrimp a new terminal onto that. Now the part number for this terminal, I got these from Mauser, it's right here. It's going to be 13849934, and that's the replacement terminal. Now there are going to be variant part numbers for these depending on the size wire, so if you can't find that one, let me know and we can find some alternate terminals. But again, that part number is 13849934. Alright, I've got those two wires crimped onto the new terminal. All that's left to do is reinsert, put the faceplate cover on, and we will get the ground wire with a spade lug, and we'll get that bolted onto a ground bolt. And there you've got the ground wire with a spade terminal put on that. We'll get that bolted back on, and then we'll get this connector back on, and that should do it. Well, there you have it, guys. Power and ground, all nicely wrapped in the OEM wire loom for a clean OEM install. I appreciate you guys watching. I know there are several ways that this can be done. Again, you can use an add a fuse tap and just tap into that fuse there. You can splice into that wire using splice taps. But when I do these retrofits, I kind of think about what GM would have done if this device were to have been hardwired from the factory. So I went ahead and did it this way. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you get a chance, please like and subscribe to all my other videos on all the different mods I've done to my Chevy Silverado. So the installation of the Street Guardian Dashcam onto my Chevy Silverado is complete. Just wanted to show you what this looks like. Everything buttoned up. So if I set this rearview mirror at the optimal position, you can kind of see the dash cam kind of fades away behind it. So let's move that out of the way so you can see the camera as I start the truck. Dash cam comes on and it begins recording immediately. Let me shut the door here. So there's a timeout feature where that screen goes dark in a timeout screensaver mode. And if I go to turn the truck off, the power will remain on because it's running on retained accessory power. The key is out of the ignition. I go to open the door and the power turns off and it turns off completely. So that's the intended operation and how it's supposed to be wired up from Street Guardian. Again, this is P. Gamboa. I hope you enjoyed this video. For any other videos pertaining to Chevy Silverado, please like and subscribe and check out my other videos. Until next time, guys, this is P. Gamboa and we'll see you later.